I groaned as my alarm buzzed that morning, the sound practically dragging me out of a sleep I desperately needed. Work wasn't going to wait, and neither was life, I guess. Normally, I took the bus. A noisy, cramped, soul-sucking ride. But today, for some reason, it felt like fate had other plans. My phone buzzed with a notification from John, my boss. Not the usual work email or reminder about deadlines, but a text. "Hey James, need a ride to work? I can swing by." I froze mid-scroll, my heart doing something I couldn't quite name. John, my boss. Charming, confident, always in control of everything. Financial reports, client calls, even the office energy. 36, divorced, with that quiet kind of charisma that made people lean in when he talked. I never imagined he'd offer me a ride. I stared at the message like it might change if I blinked. Skepticism won the first round. Why would he do this? He was a banker, serious, responsible, the kind of person who had a perfect morning routine and a perfect office life. I was just James, the young guy who tried to keep up, who answered emails at lightning speed, who maybe worked a little too hard to impress. But intrigue, that won over next. The idea of sitting alone in a car with John, away from the office buzz, away from anyone else's eyes, made my stomach flutter in a way that felt both terrifying and exciting. When the doorbell rang 30 minutes later, my hands were sweating, my mind racing with all sorts of what-ifs. I opened the door, and there he was, John, leaning casually against his sleek car, a grin playing at the corner of his lips. He looked effortless, like he'd stepped out of some ad for success and charm combined. "Morning, James," he said, voice smooth like coffee, warm yet commanding attention without trying. "Thought I'd save you the bus this morning." I swallowed, trying to sound casual. Thanks, John. That's really nice of you." He shrugged, sliding into the driver's seat like it was no big deal. "I figured it might make your morning less miserable." His grin widened, teasing, confident, like he already knew something I didn't. As I climbed in, the car smelled faintly of leather and fresh coffee. Rich, inviting. I tried to act normal, adjusting my seat, avoiding eye contact, but the nervous energy between us was undeniable. Every small gesture, his hand on the steering wheel, the way he laughed at his own jokes, even the subtle glance my way, made my pulse quicken. Driving past familiar streets, I couldn't shake the mix of curiosity and nervousness bubbling inside me. What did it mean that he offered me this ride? Was it purely friendly? Or did John have other plans? Plans that I wasn't ready to understand yet. For some reason, I felt like today wasn't going to be just another day at work. Something was shifting, something electric, something that made me wonder if this ride was the start of... I didn't know what yet, but I had a feeling it was big. The car moved smoothly down the quiet streets, and I couldn't help but steal glances at John without really trying. He had this effortless confidence about him. Not the kind that shouts for attention, but the kind that naturally draws it in. The way he handled the wheel, calm yet in control, the slight tilt of his head as he hummed along to the song playing on the stereo. It was impossible not to notice. "You like this kind of music?" he asked, glancing at me from the corner of his eye. I shrugged, trying to sound casual. "Yeah, it's chill. I listen to it sometimes." "Good taste," he said, a small smile tugging at his lips. "Not everyone appreciates the classics." I felt my cheeks warm. Compliments from John always seemed different, like they carried more weight, more meaning, than any casual praise I'd ever gotten at work. He leaned back in his seat, relaxed, yet every movement felt intentional, deliberate even. We drove in a comfortable silence for a few minutes, the kind that didn't feel awkward but instead strangely intimate. I caught him tapping along to the music, his eyes occasionally meeting mine with a spark that made my stomach do a little flip. "So," he said after a moment, his voice easy, casual, "how's life outside the office? Any new hobbies I should know about?" I laughed softly, trying to keep it light. "Nothing exciting. Just Netflix, jogging when I feel motivated, and a lot of work, obviously." He chuckled, shaking his head. "You really do throw yourself into your work, don't you? It's impressive. and slightly terrifying. I laughed again, more genuinely this time. I guess I just like doing a good job. That you do, he said. And this time his gaze lingered just a moment too long. I notice it. That kind of dedication doesn't go unnoticed. I swallowed, heart thumping a little faster. There was something in the way he said it, not boss-like, not formal, but warm, almost personal. I realized I was starting to admire him not just for being my boss, but for who he was as a person. Confident, charming, attentive, and somehow magnetic. He shifted the music to another song, humming along, and I found myself unconsciously matching his energy. We started talking about our favorite movies, sharing little personal stories I'd never mentioned at work. He told me about his weekends spent hiking to clear his mind, how he loved old bookstores, and his guilty pleasure, binging reality shows when no one was around. I listened, fascinated. Every story revealed a side of him I'd never expected. Approachable, witty, even a little goofy at times. My mind kept running ahead, wondering what it would be like to spend more time with him outside the office, just like this, laughing, talking, connecting. And then he teased me, just lightly, about my own little quirks, like how I always double-check my email drafts and how I had a tendency to overthink everything. I felt a little flustered, but the way he said it didn't feel judgmental. It felt playful, teasing in a way that made me want to respond, to tease him back. I caught myself smiling more than I thought possible on a morning ride to work. The nervousness I felt at the start had transformed into a curious, fluttering excitement. Something about John made me feel seen, appreciated, and strangely important. As we neared the office, I found myself hesitating to break the moment. The ride had been just long enough for me to start feeling a connection I hadn't expected, a warmth I wasn't ready to name. He parked the car with smooth precision, and for a moment we just sat there, listening to the fading song on the stereo. And then I wondered, a small, nervous question forming in my mind. Was John's attention just friendly, or was there more? The thought made my stomach twist in a way I didn't quite understand. But one thing was certain. Whatever this morning had started, it wasn't over. Not by a long shot. The morning air had that crisp, almost electric feeling when John suggested, casually, "How about we grab a coffee before we get to the office?" My treat. I blinked, momentarily surprised. Sure," I said, my voice a little higher than I intended. Coffee with my boss? Alone? My mind raced, but a part of me was excited. We pulled into a small, quiet cafe tucked away on a side street. It had that cozy, inviting vibe, the kind of place where people lingered over books or whispered conversations. John seemed completely at ease, the way he always did, and that calm confidence made me feel strangely safe. We ordered our drinks, his a dark roast with just a splash of milk, mine, a latte with a swirl of foam. I followed him to a corner table by the window, and we settled in, the hum of the cafe around us fading into a soft background noise. "So," John said, leaning back in his chair, "how's life outside work? You don't just live at your desk, right?" I laughed, shaking my head. I wish I could say that. Mostly it's work, Netflix, maybe a run if I can motivate myself. I shrugged, but there was a hint of self-consciousness in my voice. He smiled, that knowing kind of smile, as if he could read right through me. "I get it. Life can feel like a treadmill sometimes. But there's more to you than work, James. I can tell. You've got ambition, and I respect that." I felt my chest tighten a little. Respect from John had always meant something. It wasn't the casual kind of praise everyone gave. He noticed things about people, remembered details others overlooked, and somehow made you feel like you mattered in a way that stuck with you. We sipped our drinks, and slowly the conversation drifted away from work. He shared stories about his life, his divorce, the quiet loneliness that followed, the struggle of balancing his job with personal happiness. I was surprised at how candid he was. John, who always seemed so in control, so untouchable, was revealing pieces of himself most people never saw. "I'll admit," he said quietly, "sometimes I wonder if I spend too much time at work. I care about my team. I care about making things right. But it can get lonely." He paused, staring out the window for a moment. Being divorced, seeing friends move on. It gets to you. You start questioning if you're ever going to find someone who really gets it. I didn't know what to say at first. Hearing this side of him, vulnerable, human, shifted something in me. I'd always admired him from a professional standpoint, but now I was seeing the person behind the title. The man who was kind, thoughtful, and deeply protective of the people he cared about. Wow, I said softly. I didn't know that side of you. He chuckled, but it wasn't the usual easygoing laugh. It had a softness, a hint of melancholy. Not many do. Most people just see John, the boss. But there's more under the surface. I nodded, feeling something stir inside me. It was confusing, admiration, curiosity, maybe even something more I wasn't ready to name. He seemed so self-assured, yet hearing him speak like this made me want to know him better, understand him, be part of that world he'd carefully hidden. Then he asked about me. Not work-related, not casual. Really asked about me. What do you want, James? Not at work. Life outside this office. What do you dream about? I hesitated. Dreams weren't something I usually shared at work. But something about the way he asked, the genuine interest in his eyes, the lack of judgment made me speak. I guess I want to feel like I'm doing something meaningful, something I can be proud of. I don't know. I want balance, happiness, maybe even a little adventure. He smiled, leaning back. That sounds fair. More than fair, actually. And you deserve it, James. You put so much into your work. You owe it to yourself to chase the things that make you feel alive. The conversation continued, easy and flowing. We talked about books, movies, dreams, and fears. I learned that John loved early mornings for quiet walks, that he adored old bookstores, and that he sometimes stayed late at work just to make sure no one else carried an unnecessary burden. I could see the care in his eyes, the way he looked at people, the way he genuinely wanted to help them thrive. By the time our cups were empty and we got up to leave, I felt different. Something inside me had shifted. My admiration had grown into something more complicated, tinged with curiosity, maybe even longing. I realized I was questioning my own feelings in ways I hadn't expected. Was it possible, I wondered as we walked back to the car, that my boss, my mentor, my guide, the man I respected most, was someone I could feel more than admiration for? And if so, how could I navigate that? I didn't have the answers yet, but one thing was clear. Today wasn't just another morning. It was the beginning of something I didn't fully understand. Yet, when John suggested it, I almost choked on my coffee. I was thinking, maybe I could cook dinner for you tonight, he said casually, as if it were the most normal thing in the world. Just a little thank you for all the hard work you've been putting in lately. I blinked at him, uncertain how to respond. Dinner? At your place? My voice probably sounded more nervous than I intended. He smiled, that easy, reassuring smile of his, the one that made everything seem fine. Yeah, nothing fancy, I promise. Just some good food and company. No work talk, I swear. My first instinct was to say no. A dinner at my boss's house? Alone? That crossed so many lines in my head. But then, there was something in the warmth of his eyes, the way he leaned back and seemed genuinely pleased to offer, that made me hesitate. My curiosity won over my hesitation. Okay, I said finally, almost whispering. I'd like that. His grin widened, subtle but knowing, and suddenly I felt a mix of excitement and nervousness twist in my stomach. That evening, when I arrived, John's apartment was exactly as I imagined. Clean, organized, but lived in, with little touches that made it feel warm and welcoming. The faint scent of herbs and something delicious cooking in the oven greeted me as he opened the door. Come in, James. Make yourself at home, he said, gesturing with a casual wave. Dinner will be ready in a few minutes. Can I get you a drink? I followed him in, still a little flustered, and accepted a glass of water. The kitchen smelled incredible, garlic, rosemary, something baking in the oven. John moved around with an ease I couldn't stop noticing, chopping vegetables, stirring sauces, humming softly to the music playing. We talked as he cooked, sharing stories about our childhoods, our favorite movies, and the small quirks that made us who we were. I laughed more in that short time than I had in weeks. There was a playful energy between us. A small flirtation in the way he teased me about my obsessive coffee-making skills, and in the way I tried to sneak tastes of the sauce when he wasn't looking. "You're stealing tastes," he said, laughing, turning slightly with a mock frown. "I see you, James. Don't think I don't notice." I grinned, caught but thrilled. "It's just, your food smells amazing." I had to. The laughter lingered in the air, warm and light. And then, as we sat down to eat, the conversation softened. John began sharing more personal thoughts. Not work-related, not casual, but reflective. He spoke about how much he cared about his team, how important it was to him to make a positive difference, and how much he valued people who worked hard and stayed true to themselves. Listening to him, I realized just how much thought and care he put into everything he did. And the more I saw that side of him, the tender, attentive, almost protective side, the more I understood why I was feeling something I hadn't expected. After dinner, as we cleared the dishes together, there was a moment, a pause, where we just looked at each other, and I caught a glimpse of intention behind his easy smile. It wasn't just friendship. He was attentive, warm, considerate, and there was a subtle undercurrent of something more, something respectful, tender, and intentional. I felt my pulse quicken, and a strange mix of excitement and clarity washed over me. This wasn't the awkward, dangerous flirtation I'd feared. It was deliberate, kind, and safe. John was showing me care in a way that was thoughtful, romantic, but never overstepping boundaries. "I'm glad you came tonight," he said softly, almost shyly, as if admitting something small but meaningful. "Me too," I replied, my voice barely above a whisper. I really enjoyed it. For the first time, I realized that my feelings for John were more complicated than admiration or respect. I felt drawn to him in a way that was exciting, yes, but also safe. I trusted him. I liked him. And most importantly, I felt seen, truly seen, for who I was. As I left that night, walking back to my car, I replayed everything in my mind. The laughter, the little jokes, the soft looks, the care behind his gestures. My heart was full, my mind buzzing, and yet there was calm beneath the excitement. I knew one thing for certain. John wasn't just my boss. He was someone who had begun to occupy my thoughts in ways I hadn't anticipated. And whatever this was, whatever it could become, I wanted to explore it. Slowly, carefully, and safely. The evening air hit me as I drove home, and I realized with a quiet thrill that something had shifted. This was no longer just about work. This was about connection, about trust, about something more, and I couldn't wait to see where it would go. Work had a way of feeling different after that dinner. Every day, I noticed small things that made my heart skip. The way John's eyes lingered a moment too long when he handed me a file, or how he somehow always seemed to notice when I needed a coffee or a break before I even asked. At first, I tried to convince myself it was nothing. He's just a good boss, I told myself. He's attentive because that's who he is. That's his job. But then there were the little things that couldn't be explained by professionalism alone. There was the note he left on my desk one morning. A small, handwritten sticky note that said, "Hope your morning's going well, James. Don't forget to take a moment for yourself." I found myself staring at it longer than I should have, smiling like a fool. I tucked it into my notebook, rereading it in secret whenever I felt stressed. Then there were the inside jokes we started forming. Tiny references only we understood. A joke about my obsession with alphabetizing my files. His teasing about my carefully color-coded pens. A playful smirk he gave when I caught him humming in the office kitchen. Each moment was brief, subtle, and yet somehow electric. Even the way he moved through the office felt different now. There was a kind of rhythm to it, a presence that seemed to draw attention without demanding it. I found myself looking for it, seeking it out. My admiration for him was growing, and with it, a strange, fluttering feeling I hadn't felt before. Something warm, familiar, and a little bit thrilling. It wasn't just me noticing him either. I caught glimpses of the care he showed to others in small ways. 2. Checking if someone needed help, offering encouragement, even sharing a quick joke to brighten someone's morning. And yet, with me, there was an extra layer. That attention, that care, it felt personal, intentional. One afternoon, as I struggled with a particularly tricky spreadsheet, he leaned over my shoulder, offering guidance. "You've got this," he said softly, brushing a stray hair from my forehead in a casual gesture that made me freeze mid-type. I looked up, caught in his gaze, and for a second, the office noises faded. His encouragement, the warmth in his tone. It wasn't just professional. It was personal, and my chest tightened in a way I didn't expect. I realized, almost in disbelief, that I was beginning to reciprocate. I found myself sending a slightly longer reply to his messages, leaving little notes of my own. "Thanks for looking out for me," or "I appreciate your help, John," that carried more warmth than strictly necessary. I smiled at the inside jokes, laughed at his teasing, and found reasons to linger near him when we walked the hallways together. There were quiet moments that made my heart race. Sharing a lunch break in the break room, our hands brushing as we reached for the same coffee mug. Walking side by side in the parking lot, his shoulder occasionally bumping against mine. Laughing together over a minor mishap in a meeting, our eyes meeting across the table, unspoken understanding passing between us. It was in these tiny, seemingly insignificant moments that my feelings began to solidify. I admired him for his kindness, his confidence, his patience, and the way he made everyone around him feel valued. And more than that, I felt drawn to him. The connection we shared was growing, a quiet but undeniable energy that seemed to pulse just beneath the surface. I caught myself daydreaming about conversations that hadn't yet happened, wondering if he felt the same flutter of excitement, the same nervous anticipation when we were near. And I realized, with a mixture of fear and thrill, that I wanted him to notice my feelings too. Not just as an employee, not just as someone he mentored, but as someone who might care about him in return. One afternoon, he called me into his office under the pretense of reviewing a project. But the casual way he leaned back in his chair, the subtle smile on his lips, and the way he seemed genuinely interested in what I had to say made the meeting feel different. I found myself opening up in ways I hadn't expected, sharing thoughts and ideas with more confidence, encouraged by his attentive presence. When it ended, he gave me a look that lingered just a moment too long, and I felt a rush of heat to my cheeks. I walked back to my desk, trying to play it cool, but my mind was spinning. He notices me, he cares, he's paying attention, and I want him to. The days blurred together in a rhythm of subtle touches, lingering glances, playful teasing, and shared laughter. Our bond was growing, safe yet thrilling, familiar yet filled with new excitement. It wasn't just admiration anymore, it was something more. Something that had the potential to change everything if I let it. And slowly, tentatively, I began to allow myself to hope that he might feel the same. That this connection, this subtle, careful dance we were performing, could become something more. A friendship deepened into romance, an admiration blossoming into love. Every glance, every smile, every small act of care added up. And in my heart, I knew I was falling. Slowly. Safely, completely, but the question lingered in the back of my mind, the one I wasn't ready to answer. Does he feel the same way, or am I imagining it all? The evening had settled into a quiet calm, the office nearly empty. John and I were finishing up a long week of meetings and deadlines, the kind that leave your head buzzing and your chest a little tight. Normally, I would have rushed out, eager to escape the stress, but something kept me lingering. Something that drew me closer to him in a way I couldn't quite explain. He looked up from his laptop and gave me a small, tired smile. "Hey, James. You've been working hard all week. Mind if we step outside for a minute? Just a walk, to clear our heads." I hesitated, then nodded. Sure, I could use a break. We stepped into the cool evening air. The parking lot was quiet, the lights casting a soft glow on the asphalt. It felt intimate, like the world had shrunk to just the two of us. We walked in silence for a moment, letting the calm evening settle between us. Then he spoke, his voice softer than usual. "James, can I tell you something personal?" My heart thumped in my chest, and I nodded. "Of course." He took a deep breath, as if gathering courage. "I've spent a lot of years focusing on work, on responsibilities, on making sure everything runs smoothly for everyone else. And in doing that, I think I've neglected myself. I've been lonely more than I care to admit." I stopped walking for a second, turning to face him. His usual confidence seemed tempered by a quiet vulnerability that made him human, real. My chest tightened at the sight of it. I want a connection that matters," he continued, looking down at the pavement for a moment. "Not just casual interactions or fleeting friendships, but something meaningful. Someone I can trust, someone I can rely on, someone I can share my life with." I felt a lump form in my throat. Hearing him speak like this, without pretense, without the armor of professionalism, made me realize just how deeply I cared for him. My feelings were no longer just admiration. They were growing into something more, something emotional, something that made my heart ache in the best possible way. I found my voice, hesitant at first. I don't really know how to say this. I'm confused sometimes about what I'm feeling. But the more time I spend with you, the more I realize that I care about you. A lot. In a way that's more than just work or friendship. He stopped walking, turning to look at me fully, his expression open and honest. "James," he said softly, and there was no hint of teasing, no hint of judgment, just pure sincerity. "I care about you too, more than I probably should as your boss. But it's real. I felt this for a while, watching you work hard, watching you grow, watching you care. I didn't expect to feel this way about anyone, let alone someone I work with. But here we are." I felt a wave of relief mixed with awe. Here he was, the man I admired, the man I respected, admitting he felt the same way. My chest felt tight, but in a good way, a way that made me feel alive. We stood there for a moment, the night quiet around us, letting the words sink in. There was no rush, no need for dramatic gestures. Just honesty, just connection, just two people acknowledging that something special was happening between them. I don't want to complicate things," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "I want to respect you, and our work, and everything else. But I can't ignore this feeling. I like you, more than I probably should." He reached out, gently touching my arm. A simple gesture, but it sent a jolt through me. "And I like you, James. I promise you, whatever happens, it will be with respect, with care, and with honesty. That's all I've ever wanted. To be honest with you, and to make sure you feel safe and valued." I nodded, feeling a warmth spread through me that had nothing to do with the cool evening air. This was real. This was genuine. This was two people allowing themselves to be seen and understood without fear or pretense. For the first time, I realized that my admiration for John was intertwined with something deeper, a genuine emotional connection, built on mutual respect and shared understanding. It wasn't about rushing or rules or office politics. It was about two people acknowledging that they cared for each other and wanting to see where that care could go. We continued walking, side by side, our steps slow and deliberate. The conversation shifted to lighter topics. Plans for the weekend, favorite movies, small jokes. But the air between us had changed. There was a quiet electricity, a sense of trust, and a feeling of safety that made every word, every glance, every laugh more meaningful. As we returned to the office, I felt something shift inside me. Whatever this was between us, it was real. It was tender. It was respectful. And it was just beginning. For the first time in a long time, I felt hopeful about the future, about connection, about love. And as I looked at John, walking beside me with that calm, confident presence, I knew one thing for certain. Whatever happened next, we would face it together, honestly and with care. The days that followed our heart-to-heart were different. Work felt lighter somehow, not because the workload changed, but because I carried a little secret with me. Something warm, something exciting, something real. John and I had acknowledged our feelings, but we both agreed on keeping things subtle at the office. Professionalism mattered, yes, but so did our connection. And in the small spaces between spreadsheets and emails, our bond began to blossom. We started with small gestures. A smile that lingered a beat longer, a casual touch on the shoulder as we passed each other in the hallway, a message in the middle of the day. Thinking of you? Hope your meeting went well. Every moment felt significant, though it was quiet, understated. The thrill of knowing that we were both aware of this unspoken connection made even the smallest interactions feel electric. Outside the office, things became more open. Our first date wasn't anything grand. We went for a walk in a nearby park, the late afternoon sun casting golden light on the path. We talked about everything and nothing: movies, childhood memories, favorite books, and ridiculous office gossip. There was laughter, gentle teasing, and a comfort that came from being completely ourselves. You know, John said, glancing at me with that half-smile that made my stomach do a flip, I think you might secretly be a perfectionist about everything. Even your shoelaces are aligned properly. I laughed, shaking my head. And you notice that? Of course I do, he said with a wink. I notice everything about you. It was playful, harmless, but my heart jumped anyway. I realized that I was starting to pay attention to him the way he paid attention to me, absorbing details, small quirks, and little habits that made him him. It was magnetic, comforting, and exciting all at once. As the weeks passed, our dates became a mix of quiet, tender moments and playful adventures. We explored local bookstores, grabbing coffee and lingering over shelves of novels. We attended art exhibits, debating which pieces we liked and which left us scratching our heads. On rainy evenings, we'd cook dinner together at John's apartment, laughing when we accidentally added too much salt or burned a pan of vegetables. Those moments of shared joy and cooperation strengthened the bond between us, building trust and intimacy without ever crossing into anything inappropriate for work or public spaces. I found myself changing in ways I hadn't expected. Being with John gave me confidence, not arrogance, but a quiet assurance in who I was. I spoke up more in meetings, volunteered for challenging projects, and even started mentoring a junior colleague, something I'd been hesitant to do before. His belief in me made me believe in myself, and that was empowering. One evening, as we walked along a quiet street lit by the soft glow of street lamps, I realized just how much I had grown. You know, I said, a little shyly, I never thought I'd be this comfortable with someone, with feelings like this. You make it easy. He looked at me, eyes warm and attentive. That's because it's real, James, and because you let it be. You trust, you care, and you allow yourself to feel. That's not easy for everyone. I felt a swell of affection and admiration for him. It wasn't just about romance. It was about respect, understanding, and emotional connection. I had learned to express myself more openly, to voice my feelings, to laugh and tease without fear. And John had been the perfect partner for that growth, encouraging it subtly, always safe, always tender. Even at work, our connection was evident in the little ways. We'd exchange glances during meetings, subtle smiles that made each other's hearts race. A shared joke over the printer, a quiet word of encouragement before a presentation, a thoughtful message left on a sticky note. Our relationship was woven into the fabric of daily life, yet handled with care and discretion. I began to understand that love didn't always have to be dramatic or overwhelming. It could be quiet, supportive, and patient. It could be learning someone's favorite coffee order, laughing at their bad puns, walking beside them in the park, and knowing that in every shared moment, trust and care were being built. One night, as we sat on a bench overlooking the city lights, John nudged my shoulder gently. You've changed, he said softly. I looked at him, curious. You're more confident, more open. You let yourself enjoy life instead of just chasing work. And I think that's amazing. I smiled, feeling warmth spread through my chest. That's because of you, I admitted quietly. You've helped me see things differently, made me better. He smiled back, his hand brushing against mine in a gentle, intentional gesture. Not demanding, not rushful, just present, just caring. We make each other better, he said simply. And in that moment, I realized that this was exactly what I wanted. A relationship built on trust, care, laughter, and respect. A romance that was safe, tender, and genuine. It wasn't about grand gestures or dramatic declarations. It was about daily moments, small affirmations, and shared growth. Walking home that night, my mind replayed every smile, every laugh, every gentle touch. I felt lighter, happier, and more alive than I had in years. I knew that whatever the future held, John and I were on the same page, moving forward together, slowly but surely, building something real and lasting. And I couldn't wait to see what the next chapter would bring. Everything felt perfect for a while. Subtle glances, quiet jokes, shared lunches, evening walks. Our connection seemed effortless. But as much as we tried to keep things private and professional, office life has a way of complicating even the best intentions. It started with whispers, small comments here and there, nothing overt at first, but enough to make me notice. A raised eyebrow from a colleague, a fleeting "Did you see John and James together last night?" Overheard in the break room. I tried to brush it off, convincing myself it didn't matter. John seemed calm, but I knew he noticed it too. The tension came to a head one Friday morning. A casual conversation with a coworker turned into a pointed question. "So, are you two?" The ellipsis alone was enough to make my stomach twist. I excused myself quickly, trying to maintain composure, but the discomfort lingered. Later, in John's office, I voiced my concerns. "I don't know if people are noticing, or if it matters, but it's starting to feel awkward." He nodded, leaning back in his chair, his usual calm presence a small comfort. "I know. I've noticed the subtle whispers too. But we can handle this. Together." We spent the next few hours talking through boundaries. How to keep our professional lives separate from our personal ones, how to communicate clearly if one of us felt uncomfortable, and how to protect our relationship from outside speculation. It wasn't easy. The idea of managing both the office and a budding romance was daunting, but John's patience made it feel possible. We agreed on small adjustments, keeping physical affection minimal at work, focusing on clear communication, and making sure our actions couldn't be misinterpreted by others. It felt strange at first, pretending to be just colleagues in public when privately we were so close, but the mutual respect and trust we had built made it manageable. The challenges didn't stop there. Balancing work responsibilities with time together proved trickier than I imagined. Late nights at the office, unexpected client meetings, and high-pressure deadlines often collided with our plans for a walk, a coffee, or a quiet dinner. I started feeling guilty for taking time away from work, while John occasionally worried he was imposing on my schedule. One evening, after a particularly stressful week, I found myself venting to John on a quiet walk near the park. "I feel like I'm constantly juggling everything," I admitted, the frustration clear in my voice. "Work, responsibilities, and now us. I don't want to let either side suffer." John stopped, taking both my hands in his, a gesture of reassurance. "James, look at me," he said softly. "You don't have to carry everything alone. We're in this together. Work doesn't define us, and neither does gossip. What matters is that we respect each other and communicate. That's the foundation we've built, and it's stronger than any rumor or challenge." His words hit me harder than I expected. In that moment, I realized that the strength of our relationship wasn't about secrecy or avoiding challenges. It was about facing them together, about trust, respect, and honesty. Over the next few weeks, we put our plan into action. At work, we maintained professionalism, focusing on projects and meetings, while keeping our connection subtle but meaningful. Outside of work, we carved out dedicated time for each other. Quiet evenings cooking together, weekend walks, and shared hobbies that reminded us why we enjoyed each other's company in the first place. I also noticed personal growth in myself. I became more confident in asserting boundaries, more comfortable expressing my needs, and more patient with the uncertainties of life. And John, I saw him grow too. He became more mindful of others' perceptions, more communicative about his own feelings, and even more protective of the relationship we were building. One afternoon, as we left the office together, I felt a sense of pride and relief. "We're managing it," I said, squeezing his hand. "It's not easy, but we're making it work." John smiled, his eyes warm. "We are. And the fact that we face these challenges together only makes us stronger. You've grown so much, James, and I couldn't be prouder." I felt a swell of emotion. It wasn't just about the challenges we overcame. It was about what we learned from them. About trust, communication, and the depth of care we had for each other. The obstacles hadn't weakened us. They had strengthened our bond. Walking home that evening, the city lights reflecting off the pavement, I realized something important. Love isn't always effortless. It requires patience, understanding, and the willingness to face difficulties together. And with John by my side, I felt ready for whatever came next. For the first time, I truly understood that relationships aren't just about shared laughter or quiet moments. They're about mutual growth, respect, and unwavering support. And that, more than anything else, made me feel confident about the future. It was a quiet Saturday afternoon, the city bathed in golden sunlight, when John suggested we take a walk to our favorite park. There was a calm in his voice, a hint of excitement I couldn't quite place. As we strolled along the familiar path, our hands brushing occasionally, I felt that quiet warmth, the comfort of being with someone who knew me completely and still cared deeply. We reached the small hill overlooking the lake, where the late afternoon light shimmered across the water. He stopped, turning to face me, his usual calm, confident expression softened by a tenderness I hadn't seen before. "James," he began, his voice low and steady. "We've been through a lot together. Work, challenges, laughter, and quiet moments. And through it all, one thing has become incredibly clear to me." My heart thumped in my chest, anticipation threading through every word. "I care about you," he continued, eyes locking onto mine, "more than I ever expected. You've become a part of my life in a way I can't imagine being without. And I don't want to imagine it. I want us. Our connection, our partnership, our laughter and shared dreams, to keep growing. Together." I felt my throat tighten, emotions swirling. I wanted to speak, to express the depth of what I felt, but the words tangled in my chest. Instead, I let my eyes do it, letting him see everything. My admiration, my trust, my love. He smiled, understanding without needing words. "I know this is sudden, and I don't want to pressure you," he said gently. "But I want to make a promise to you, James. I want to commit to us fully, openly, honestly. Not just as partners, but as friends, as supporters, as people who will grow together no matter what comes our way." The sincerity in his voice, the care in his eyes, broke down every hesitation I had. I stepped closer, our hands finally finding each other fully, fingers entwined. "John," I whispered, my voice shaking with emotion. I've been afraid to say it, but I feel the same. I trust you, care about you, and I want to be with you. Openly, honestly, fully." A gentle smile spread across his face, and he squeezed my hands, his thumb brushing over mine in a tender, grounding gesture. "Then we have our promise. No matter the challenges, no matter the obstacles, we face them together. We nurture this, we respect this, and we build it into something lasting." The sunlight danced across the lake as we stood there, the world around us fading away. In that moment, it wasn't about work or gossip or expectations. It was about two people acknowledging their love and their commitment to each other. A love built on trust, respect, laughter, and shared dreams. We leaned into each other, a quiet, lingering hug that said everything words couldn't. My head rested against his chest, feeling the steady beat of his heart, and I realized that this connection, this partnership, was what I had been longing for without even knowing it. For the first time in my life, I felt completely seen, completely accepted, and completely loved. And as we pulled back, our eyes met, full of warmth, understanding, and an unspoken agreement. We were in this together. "I love you, John," I said softly. "I love you too, James," he replied, his voice steady but full of emotion. "And I promise to spend every day showing you that." As we walked hand in hand down the path, the sun dipping toward the horizon, I felt a profound sense of peace. Our love was no longer a secret, no longer tentative. It was affirmed, cherished, and ready to grow. And I knew, without a doubt, that this was the start of our shared future, built on trust, respect, and unwavering care. It's strange how life works sometimes. One ordinary morning, all I wanted was a ride to work. I never imagined that a simple gesture, John offering to pick me up, would turn into something so extraordinary. That ride, that quiet drive filled with music and conversation, was the first step in a journey I couldn't have anticipated. A journey that reshaped my life in ways I didn't yet understand. Looking back now, I realize how much we've both grown. From subtle glances and inside jokes at the office to quiet walks, shared dinners, and heartfelt conversations, our relationship evolved slowly, carefully, and intentionally. It wasn't about rushing or grand gestures. It was about attention, care, and respect, the kind that builds a foundation strong enough to weather any challenge. I've learned that love isn't always flashy. It doesn't always start with fireworks or dramatic declarations. Sometimes, it begins in small moments. A shared laugh over coffee, a handwritten note left on a desk, a conversation that makes your heart flutter because someone sees you in a way no one else ever has. That's where the real connection lies. Emotional intimacy, trust, understanding, and the courage to be vulnerable. John showed me that. He showed me that love can be safe, tender, and respectful, and that those qualities make it last. I showed him that I could be open, honest, and willing to grow, not just in my career or personal ambitions, but in my ability to express my feelings and care for someone deeply. Together, we've created a partnership that balances respect with passion, guidance with freedom, and support with laughter. We've faced challenges, of course. Rumors, busy schedules, and the boundaries we had to navigate at work tested us in ways I didn't always anticipate. But every challenge only strengthened us. We learned to communicate better, to trust more deeply, and to prioritize each other while still honoring our professional lives. That balance, I think, is what made this love so resilient. Now, when I think about that first ride, I smile. It wasn't just transportation to a building full of deadlines and meetings. It was the beginning of something far greater, a connection that turned into trust, friendship, and eventually love. It taught me that some of life's most profound experiences begin quietly, in moments we might overlook if we're not paying attention. And that's the takeaway I hope people hear in our story. Love can grow in unexpected places. It doesn't always arrive as a dramatic gesture or a lightning bolt of passion. Sometimes, it begins with small acts of kindness, thoughtful words, and shared moments of vulnerability. Emotional connection, truly seeing and understanding each other, matters more than anything else. As John and I continue walking this path together, I feel hopeful and grateful. There's a lifetime of shared mornings, evenings, and countless quiet moments ahead. We don't know exactly what the future holds, but we do know that we face it together, grounded in trust, care, and love that has grown naturally, beautifully, and unexpectedly. Sometimes, the ride you didn't expect turns out to be the journey of a lifetime. And for me, that ride wasn't just to work. It was to a life filled with laughter, growth, and the kind of love I never imagined finding.